Imagine winter hits tonight. The temperature crashes, the wind starts cutting through the trees, and you have no brick house, no heater, no grocery store, no thick blanket waiting for you inside. Just a small group of humans, a fire that cannot go out, animal hides, stone tools, and one simple goal: make it to morning. That is the world your ancestors lived in for thousands of winters. And the strange part is, they were not barely surviving. In many places, they were adapting so well that they stayed in brutal cold long after other animals moved away. So how did ancient humans survive winter before houses? The answer is not one big invention. It is a chain of smart decisions, each one solving a different problem. Where to sleep, how to stay warm, what to eat, what to wear, and most importantly, how to do it all together before one mistake turned deadly. The first surprise is this: before houses does not mean without shelter. Early humans were not standing in open snow hoping for the best. They used whatever the land gave them: caves, rock shelters, tree cover, riverbanks protected from wind. And when nature did not offer enough, they built temporary shelters from branches, animal hides, bone, and whatever else they could carry or find. In Ice Age Europe, some groups even made large structures from mammoth bones, creating barriers against wind in places where wood was scarce. And before we go further, tell me in the comments, if you had to survive one winter with only Stone Age tools, what would you protect first: fire, food, or shelter? That question mattered because winter was never just about cold. Cold was only the beginning. The real danger was what came with it: frozen water, less plant food, harder hunting, longer nights, wet clothing, exhaustion. One storm could trap a group. One injury could slow everyone down. One lost fire could mean death. So survival depended on planning long before the first snowfall ever arrived. That is where fire comes in. Today, we think of fire as comfort. For ancient humans, fire was life support. It gave warmth, light, cooked food, hardened wooden tools, dried wet hides, and kept predators at a distance. But the key was not just making fire, it was keeping it alive. A winter fire had to be watched, fed, and protected constantly. If fuel was limited, people used more than wood. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age sites suggests some groups also burned bone and dry plant material when trees were scarce. But even fire had limits. A fire can warm your hands. It cannot protect your whole body if your clothing is wrong. And this is where ancient humans were far more advanced than most people imagine. They did not just throw fur over their shoulders and call it a day. Over time, they learned which animal skins insulated best, when to harvest them, how to scrape and soften them, and eventually how to shape them into fitted clothing. That matters because loose hides help, but fitted clothing traps heat better, blocks wind better, and lets you keep moving. Some of the oldest sewing technologies show that humans were making shaped garments long before the modern world existed. Later, eyed needles made more complex clothing possible, but even earlier tools could pierce hides and help create workable winter gear. In other words, winter survival was not just about toughness. It was about technology. Slow, simple, handmade technology, but technology all the same. If this is changing the way you picture prehistoric life, tap like. Most people imagine ancient humans as helpless against nature, when the truth is they were constantly inventing ways to outsmart it. Then there was food, and winter turned food into a brutal math problem. Your body burns more energy in cold weather. Hunting gets harder, plants disappear, daylight shrinks. That meant ancient humans needed calorie-dense food, especially animal fat, not just meat. Fat, marrow, organs. The parts modern people often ignore were some of the most valuable foods in the coldest months. And they did not always eat everything immediately. Evidence suggests some prehistoric groups stored high-value food resources, including marrow left protected inside bones for later use. That is a huge clue. It means they were not only reacting to hunger, they were thinking ahead. They knew scarcity was coming, and they built a buffer against it. This also helps explain why winter survival was rarely an individual achievement. One person alone can gather fuel, hunt, repair clothing, watch for predators, and care for children for only so long before something fails. A group can divide the risk. One person maintains the fire. Another processes hides. Another tracks game. Another stays with the young or elderly. Ancient winter survival worked because humans were cooperative before they were comfortable. That cooperation may be the real secret behind everything. We often talk about the human brain as if intelligence lives inside one skull. But ancient survival shows the opposite. Human intelligence became powerful when it was shared. One generation learned where to camp. The next learned how to stitch hides more tightly. Another learned which valleys blocked the wind. Another learned how to follow migrating animals or find water that did not freeze solid. Winter knowledge was a library, and the tribe was the bookshelf. And here is something even more impressive. Ancient humans were not simply hiding from winter. In many places, they were choosing strategies that let them remain in cold environments instead of retreating. That meant mobility when needed, but it also meant confidence. Confidence in fire. Confidence in clothing. Confidence in shelter. Confidence in each other. So ask yourself this: was winter really the enemy, or was ignorance the enemy? Because once humans understood the patterns, wind direction, animal movement, fuel sources, snow cover, storage, teamwork, winter became less like a monster and more like a system. Still dangerous, still unforgiving, but knowable. If you have ever camped in the cold, or even just lost heat during a winter blackout, drop a comment with the one survival lesson you think modern people would forget first. Ancient humans could not afford to forget anything. And that is why the title question has a trick hidden inside it. How did humans survive winter before houses? In one sense, they survived by building the earliest versions of houses anyway. Not permanent suburbs, not stone mansions, but shelters good enough for the world they lived in. A house is really just a technology that separates your body from the weather. Ancient humans understood that idea long before walls and roofs looked the way they do now. They also survived because they were flexible. If one area lost food, they moved. If wood ran out, they changed fuel. If winds shifted, they changed camp. If clothing failed, they repaired it. Their strength was not that they conquered nature once and for all. Their strength was that they kept adjusting faster than winter could break them. And maybe that is the biggest lesson of all. Our ancestors did not survive because they were superhuman. They survived because they paid attention. They learned. They prepared. They cooperated. And over thousands of years, those skills stacked up into something powerful enough to carry a tropical species into frozen worlds. If you enjoy uncovering how ancient humans solved impossible problems, subscribe for more stories like this, because the deeper you look into prehistory, the less it feels primitive, and the more it feels like the beginning of everything we still depend on today. So the next time you step into a warm room and shut the door against winter, remember this: long before modern houses existed, humans had already built the real shelter that mattered most. Not just fires, not just hides, not just huts. They built shared knowledge. And that may have been the strongest wall against winter our species ever made.